All
We're
right,
good. We're good. We're there.
Hey, YouTube
Sorry,
people.
y'all.
YouTube people, you didn't miss
went
anything.
nuts, right?
You didn't miss
Right
anything. We
before I
were we
started.
were holding off until y'all got in here, or until we got in there, and you guys were
The
all waiting
internet,
for us.
folks. The internet. Hey, everybody. That's Greg. I'm Nate. We're here to talk about birds
Yes.
and not technological snafus. We are What's This Bird Live. We're here again to talk about birds and bird ID. Welcome, Greg. I just noticed. Did you put the updated ABA logo on the stuff here, or have you been using that the whole time?
I've been using that the whole time.
Oh, well, I guess I
Well,
only
for
ever
quite a
noticed
while.
it just now.
For quite a while, anyway.
We are from the American Birding Association. It is a membership organization that talks about birds, birding, produces a lot of really great magazines, a lot of great media stuff. And one of those things that we do is What's This Bird? The ABA maintains a number of groups on Facebook
Yes, we
about
do.
birds, one of which is What's This Bird, where you can post photos, movies, sound files,
Yes.
drawings, as we will learn soon,
Drawings.
about birds and bird ID, and our friendly community and our great admins will help you identify those birds.
And usually pretty
Every
quickly.
once in a while, every once in a while, we like to talk in a little more depth about some birds that have popped up there, and that's what this show is all about.
Yeah.
We are here to talk about bird ID and birding, whatever you've got up your sleeve.
And part of the fun of doing this live is, well, as you just witnessed.
I don't know if I'd call it fun.
I call it fun.
I don't know if I'd call it fun.
But part of the fun of this is that we get to shout out to you guys because we can see you in the comments. I see Chris Sloan and John Anderson. Hi, Chris. Hi, John. I'm sure there's people on YouTube right now, but we're watching the comments. Nate is watching YouTube. I'm watching Facebook. And if you've got something to say, you've got a question, you got something you want to bring up, just drop it in the comments and we'll do our best to get to it. So this is interactive TV.
Interactive. It's like TV from the future. NAL 1212 from Arlington Heights, Illinois. I believe that's not too far from where you are, Greg.
That's
Scott
probably NAL
Michigan.
1212 from Arlington Heights. I'll bet that's Nolan.
Nolan. Eric Yanyo from Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, where there is a barnacle goose. Hello, everybody. We're here to talk birds.
Yes, John from Olympia, Washington
birding,
says it's 44 degrees and sunny, and the yellow-rumped warblers.
Bird feeding.
Both forms are migrating through in bright plumage. So yes, and spring is springing everywhere, and as we kind of alluded, the pollen is flying everywhere.
This is the worst pollen year in the Southeast that I can remember, and I've been here 20 years.
Yeah.
It is nasty.
I was telling Nate this morning that I have to give my dog Benadryl at night so she can sleep comfortably.
You can eat the air. You can eat it. Take a big bite of pollen.
But birds are moving. There's everything from woodcocks starting their displays to warblers arriving. We've got
that's old news. They were doing that 2 months ago down here.
Yeah, well, I'm up here in the frozen north, and as John was saying, on the West Coast, birds are starting to move. So spring is springing, and there've been some pretty wild vagrants around lately. I mean, that we haven't talked about it, but that Amur stonechat has been in South Texas all winter, and people are still seeing it. Like every time they go out, the bird is being just ridiculously cooperative.
Yeah, that is a wild record. But it's not completely unusual. There's a pattern.
It kind of fits a pattern
of East Asian songbirds turning up in the Southeast along the Gulf Coast. It's not the first. Well, I guess I should just say the Southeast. It happens. There was a citrine. The ABA area's first record of citrine wagtail. Another East Asian songbird was in Mississippi.
And not just songbirds. The famous
Virginia.
Steller's eagle from the Northeast
Yeah.
showed up first in South Texas.
So they say.
Yeah, there's pictures of it.
AI generated, Greg. I don't know.
Yeah, we're not going there.
It's a scourge.
Hi, Mia. Mia's back on Facebook.
Katie
Um,
Van Blaricum from Kansas, Blaine Bowen from Arkansas, Ann from on the Salish Sea, Lidan Felix from Brazil, Kelly Smith from Rochester, New York. Not our friend Kelly Smith, our coworker Kelly Smith from
yes,
Texas.
there are
Kelly
many
Smith from
Kelly
Rochester,
Smiths
New
out
York.
there.
Or the Kelly Smith who was a soccer player for England for a long time. Katie Van Blaricum says the first Lawrence's goldfinch in Kansas this week. Yes, cool bird, great bird. Still
Yes,
there, I wonder.
Chris
I
says
was
that
just talking about
the
it.
Stellar Seagull in South Texas was a deep fake from the deep birding state.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
well, it's only a matter of
He
time until
knows.
that happens.
He
Hey,
knows. He's on the
Birds and
trolley.
Blooms is doing that already.
Ooh, shots fired. Yeah, no AI pictures, folks. No AI pictures. You can tell by the feet.
You can always tell by the feet.
Always
You
tell
can
by the
always
feet.
tell. That's AI doesn't understand the feet
Does
yet.
not understand bird feet.
Nope, hasn't got it. Um, yeah. So, anyways, like we said, what we do here is we work through some bird IDs from pictures that people have uploaded to What's This Bird group in Facebook, and occasionally we get them from other places. We also have What's This Bird group on our ABA community, which is our member directory and social media experience for ABA members. So you can go there if you're an ABA member and check out some bird stuff. We've got a new ABA photo quiz up yesterday, as a matter of fact. It's an interesting one. I think people.
There's a good What's This Bird community on Reddit as well, though it is
That's
not
true.
an ABA affiliated What's This Bird community.
No.
But it's good.
Yeah. So with that, let's kind of jump in a little bit. Before we do though,
A little bit of news.
just a little bit. Two of our dear friends, Matt Hale and Nick Block, talked with Nate last week, or this week, I should say, about winged warblers. So we're talking about golden winged and blue winged warblers. And I'm going to assume, talking about knowing these guys, you go dive deep into the genetics, and
We get a little weedy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a great conversation. Nick Block and Matt Hale were the authors of a paper or an article that was published in the most recent issue of North American Birds, which is another one of ABA's great publications that you get if you're a member of the ABA. And it's all about, the current understanding of winged warbler genetics and also sort of all the weird ways that those hybrids can manifest. It's fascinating. I learned a lot from this discussion. We think of Brewster's and Lawrence's warbler as sort of the main hybrids, but there are crosses upon crosses upon crosses between these two birds, and they show up in a lot of really interesting ways. The hybridization shows up in a lot of really interesting ways. Great conversation, great birds. Check it out, please, on the podcast.
So the upshot: how long until they're lumped?
2.5, 3 million years.
Right.
Oh, you mean like what? Who the I don't know AOU or eBird says?
Yeah, pick your.
So
pick
they make
your
the
flavor.
case. I don't want to spoil it, but they make the case that they should consider they act as though they are two different species, and those should continue to be considered two different species, even though they hybridize regularly. In much the same way that I don't know, Western gull and Glaucus wing gull hybridize regularly and create this sort of hybrid swarm.
Yeah.
It's a really unique situation with the winged warblers because it's kind of this matrix that their ranges overlap. I don't want to listen to the episode. My explanation is a poor imitation of what you'll get from Nick and Matt, but it's a great topic and a fun conversation.
Yeah, and especially since they're starting to move into the ABA area right now.
Here's the season.
And just a quick shout out to Len, Daphne, and Rose, Jared from The Rock, and Nancy Kitchen from Kentucky.
Jared.
Shout out to you guys.
Getting close to Newfoundland rare bird season coming up pretty soon. Although they had an extraordinary fall, so maybe have a good spring too.
Yeah,
last year was great. Then they have like Eurasian oyster catcher and a bunch of black-tailed
well,
godlets.
they had the Eurasian oyster catcher that just sat in a median strip in.
Yeah, that was last spring, right? I want to say it was last spring.
I don't remember if exactly when it was.
It all runs together.
But it was just sitting out there in the middle of a busy street somewhere in St. John.
Yeah.
Um,
Newfoundland's
yeah,
second record, only like the
crazy
third or
stuff.
fourth aviary record.
Speaking of crazy stuff, as Nate alluded to earlier here, just a minute or two ago, we get pictures, photographs. We get
A year ago this week. That's right. I thought it was
we get written descriptions. We get vocal recordings of vocalizations, and we get drawings. And occasionally, I will throw up the drawings here, and
if they're good.
And
They aren't
this
always
is
good.
one of the best.
This is a good one.
This is a good one.
Mystery duck.
Yes, and anybody who has seen this species knows what it is. Because
it's a quick illustration, but it is a definitive illustration.
Absolutely definitive. And I think this represents kind of the pinnacle.
Narrow it down to two, but there's one that's the likely one.
Yeah. But and I think the voices are a little bit different too, but I'll have to check. But yes, Mystery Duck. I think this represents kind of the pinnacle of field notes, because
These are good field notes. These are good. Field
notes. It's got everything. It's got everything. It's not Donald. But so
it's
this
clearly
is
wearing pants, so it can't be Donald.
It's clearly wearing pants. This is from Houston, Texas. So as we can see, it's got a goofy neck and feet's a dangling.
Feet's a
going
dangling.
Squeaka, and sitting trees.
In a tree. Yeah.
So those of you who are my age may remember back when whistling ducks were called tree ducks.
Mm-hmm. My first field guide, the old golden guide that I used to have, called them black-bellied tree duck.
Yes, and we have 4 species of ducks that routinely sit in trees in the ABA area. There's a couple more that nest in trees, but they don't sit around in trees. Yeah,
4. I can think of 3. I think I'm missing one. What's the one I'm missing?
Muscovy.
Oh yeah, that is the one I'm missing. It's a rare one though.
Yeah, well, unless you count the
fair enough.
The manky ones.
Yeah.
But those four ducks routinely sit in trees and on rooftops.
But we didn't name them. The fulvous whistling duck, the black-bellied whistling duck, and wood duck.
Yes. And so if you see a duck sitting in a tree, it is probably one of those. Other ducks there's ducks that nest in trees, like the golden eyes,
ducks that nest in trees.
Hooded merganser. I think bufflehead
common
too.
merganser, bufflehead. Yep.
Yeah. So, but they don't hang around. And on Facebook, Daphne and Rose got it. Black-bellied whistling duck. So I want to share this picture that I took in Harlingen, Texas, during one of the Lower Rio Grande Valley birding festivals. So get this silhouette that this person has drawn in your mind, and just kind of keep a good mental picture of it. And there you have it. Just
goofy neck, check. Feet's a dangling.
Feet's a dangling.
The only thing that they didn't put in the photo was that big white wing bar, or the big white wing stripe that the
I think
black-bellied whistling ducks have. But if you don't see it from the top, or you can easily miss it. But they have that massive white wing stripe on the spread wing that is very obvious when they're flying.
And if they're up in the trees, the underwings and belly are all jet black, so they appear really dark.
Squeaka, I can hear that flock.
Squeaka. They sit on wires and on rooftops, and they just look silly as all get out. And I just want to back up to that again because it was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So our first one.
What are the birds in the back? Are those?
There's a bonus species in there. Chris says, "Yeah, I'm gonna guess those are great-tailed grackles."
That'd be my guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're not going to be crows.
No crows down there.
No crows down there. Yeah. And this was in a residential neighborhood.
Not common ones.
This was behind somebody's house. There was a little drainage ditch behind somebody's house, and they had a bird feeder back there, and there must have been 200 black-bellied whistling ducks sitting up on the wires and the rooftops all around this house.
They move in herds,
Which is one of the wonderful things about going to places like the Rio Grande Valley, because it's I don't know what it is about places like Texas and Florida, where birds that we see up here. Okay, like when I say up here, I mean north of there. I was
any place
thinking
that's
about
not Texas or Florida.
yeah, as I was hunting for this picture through my files, I came across pictures of long-billed curlews. And we think about long-billed curlews, we think, okay, out in the Great Plains, and you see them from a distance or sometimes on a mud
Where
flat.
I live, they're on the Barrier Islands. And
Out on the
they're
Barrier
far
Islands,
away.
if you get them, that would be a good bird up there, I would imagine.
Annual, but very uncommon.
Yeah. But in South Texas, they're in the parking lots walking around like you're going to the HEB or something to get
In the
some
empty
beer.
fields.
And the long-billed curlews are walking around in the parking lots, and you almost have to beep to get them out of your way. It's pretty crazy stuff, and I don't know why birds that are normally skittish, when they get to South Texas or Florida, they, anhingas sitting on the handrail of a boardwalk, and they refuse to move.
Yeah.
They'll stab you. They'll stab you in the face before they'll move. All right, so black-bellied whistling duck is our bird here, and one of my favorite waterfowl.
Squeaker.
Well, and also because they're just, I've lived through the time of them expanding from being a true South Texas specialty. Like you had to go to the river to get them.
I remember my very first ones, and it was south of Waco. We were on our way driving, pull over on I remember it was Delta Lake. I think it was in northern Hidalgo County. That was as far north as they would get in the 90s. And there was a big flock of them.
Yeah, well, and now like in places, in the Midwest, and in the East, in Illinois, they're regular migrants in the spring and breed
they
here
went up the Mississippi.
and breed in Illinois regularly. Just an incredible explosion. And another, South Texas species, which used to be olivaceous cormorants, now neotropic cormorant. Same thing. They're now uncommon but regular. Daphne and Rose said they got their lifer long-billed curlew at a Payless shoe store parking lot. So
Looking for shoes. Yeah.
looking for shoes.
Looking for a good deal.
All right. So now we are, speaking of Florida, we are going to go to South Florida. And this is
Largo or Key
interesting.
Largo, is that the same thing?
I believe so.
Doesn't
Yes.
matter. Doesn't really matter.
No, I believe so.
So South Florida.
South Florida. This is a good one. This is an interesting one.
For sure. What do we got here, Greg? We've got kind of a brownish bird with some, white markings on the wings. It's got a large head, a fairly broad, long bill. Not a lot of color, but what I can see, it looks like there's a little bit of yellow. Hard to tell whether that is, the color of
if you're talking about
artifact.
the undertail coverts, that's
Undertail
hard to say.
coverts a little bit, but the leaves behind it are kind of blown out, so it's hard to get a sense of that. I do definitely see some rufous, rusty red in the outer wing feathers. The primary feathers there. This looks like a flycatcher. It's sitting straight up. Doesn't look like it's got any. It's got a lot of markings on the wings, a couple wing bars, but the markings on the wings rule out any impid or peewee.
That rufus,
the appearance of yellow. Yeah, the rufus would rule that out too.
The rufus and the little bit
Myarchus.
of rufus in the rump and the tail kind of takes us straight to the Myarchus flycatchers, which there's a bunch of them, and there's a few in South Florida.
A couple.
But it's got
a lot of them in South Florida. Maybe all of the regularly occurring Myarchus would be possible.
It looks like
Nuttings.
it looks like it's got a crest. No, not Nuttings. Nuttings is Arizona.
Yeah. So I've been thinking all of them except for Nuttings.
Oh, all of them except
there are
for
wintering
Nuttings.
brown crested.
Right.
There are wintering ash-throateds. Lysagras is a vagrant this time of year. April tends to be a good time of year for Lysagras flycatcher in the Florida Keys. But But this is awfully dark and a lot of rufous in the wing. I think Lysagras can be safely ruled out. It's a very pale Myarchus.
Yes.
Not a lot of rufous. Actually, the rufous in the wing is a nice field mark for a lot of them don't have that. Ash-throated has a little bit, brown-throated.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that, shall we?
Yeah, throw them up.
Let's get into that. So we've got here. I've got the three that I think would be most or kind of expected. I mean, Nate mentioned
Brown-crested is there, but very, very infrequent.
Very, very infrequently. Going from right to left with the least likely, Lysagras, as Nate mentioned, it's very washed out and pale. It's kind of overall gray. It doesn't have a lot of rufous. But I included it here for one reason, and that is the innermost tertial. So if you look at the bird on the left, which is the one we're talking about, I point out the innermost tertial with the white arrow. And you'll notice how on the great crested flycatcher in the middle, that innermost tertial, the white edge, is really wide and bold compared to the others. And ash-throated, not so much. Now, all of this stuff can be, it's variable due to feather wear and all of that. But when you see the birds from behind, that is very often a very good field mark for telling ash-throated from great crested is the boldness, the width of that innermost tertial crescent, which I think makes our bird a great crested flycatcher.
I agree with you, Greg. And birds are going to be probably in just about the freshest plumage they can be. A lot of them, a lot of our neotropical migrants like this. So feather wear probably not a thing to even worry about at this point. Later in the year, maybe. But yeah, and just the overall darkness really. I mean, it's almost like a very, very deep brown, maybe even a little bit of a greenish in there.
It's got some greenish on the back, and it's got a little bit of a little coppery tone on the rump. All of which would rule out Lysagras, as we said.
For sure. As we said, Lysagras is so pale. If you get a look at it, practically no yellow at all underneath. It's maybe just a really light wash. Ash-throated a little bit more, but it's an awfully pale bird too. You're thinking this is a bird of kind of the dry areas of the Southwest, though it does turn up in the east regularly. Usually in the winter, late fall and winter. But it's awfully pale as well. As Greg said, that tertial, the innermost tertial, is the slam dunk field mark on this. You don't get very many slam dunk field marks in birding, but that is one for this one. But just pointing out some of the other things that point towards a great crested flycatcher as well.
Yeah, and that is
also rules out brown-headed, as Andrew Haffenden points out in the comments. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and I remember that not too long
brown-crested,
ago.
I mean. Brown-crested, right?
Brown-crested.
Brown-crested, brown-headed.
Chasing a very, very pale female great-crested flycatcher all over Lincoln Park, trying to get a glimpse. It was up high and moving around a lot, and I chased this thing. I chased this thing for an hour until it finally got to a place where it sat with its back to me, and I could see the tertials well enough, because I was sure that I had an ash-throated flycatcher, and which is a very good bird in Illinois. But no, it was just a very pale, great-crested female, and that's that.
Sometimes they be like that.
Sometimes they do. As I've said 150 times, birding is hard.
So great crested flycatcher, also probably the expected migrant this time of year. They're a relatively early migrant in the east. I expect them, up where I am. Any time now in another week or so, and so they'd definitely be in Florida right now, especially.
And there's also a small population that winters in South Florida, in far South Florida. So
South
you
Florida
can find
like
them.
A giant aviary.
Yeah, you could find them most of the year, it seems.
Quick question from Sarah Coffey. She asked about long-billed curlew. This is a previous conversation. Will it be a possibility in Nebraska, heading out to Nebraska, Wyoming, and Colorado next week?
So long-billed,
I would think so. I would check
curlew.
I would check. I got hair on my. I think so, but I would check eBird to be
Well, I would, yeah, definitely
certain.
check eBird for reports. But my understanding, and I'm just double
Let me
checking
pull it
this.
up.
Um, yes, it definitely does
Yeah, I
migrate
mean, they move through
through.
there. It's the timing
They
that's
move
the
through there.
question.
It's the timing and the weather for places, because
Yeah.
long-billed curlews are long distance migrants in the sense, they don't migrate that far compared to other shorebirds, but they do it in one hop without stopping unless they have to.
Yeah.
And they will go from Alberta or Saskatchewan to South Texas in one flight without stopping unless they hit weather or some other reason. So during migration, unless there's places where they tend to stop anyways. And that's the same with godwits, like Hudsonian godwits and
Mm.
Wimbrels even. Wimbrels, they're around. I mean, you'll see them, but if you want to really see them, you got to go to some place like the Delmarva or someplace where they really congregate.
I'm looking. So this is. I don't know if people are familiar with. eBird has so many cool features. One of the ones they've done forever that is I find very useful in this sort of thing is go to the bar charts, and you can look up all the bird bar charts for a given state or even a county. And I'm looking at the one for Nebraska for longbill curlew, and it looks like it starts to widen in April. It really widens in May, maybe early June. Longbill curlew breeds, and that could be part of that. They breed in the upper Great Plains, so there might be some parts up in especially the
Yeah.
northwest corner of Nebraska where they're going to be breeding. But for the most part, it looks like April's a good time to see them. The bar chart gets a little wider there.
All right. Let's go to Arizona.
Moving on.
Moving
Moving
along.
on.
Oh, we're kind of ripping through these kind of fast here.
Are we going too fast? Do we need to
Maybe a
slow
little
down?
bit.
So this is a bird.
It is a
Um,
bird.
we know that because it has feathers and has a beak.
And we
Yeah,
can
so
and we
this
can
is
tell that it's not AI because the feet look okay.
the feet look okay. So what we got here is a relatively unstreaked brown thing with interesting face pattern and a broad-based short bill. Says Sparrow to me. Greg, look at that horizontal posture. A finch would kind of be sitting up a little bit more straight. It would also have a shorter tail compared to the rest of the body. Long tail, short wings,
The
conical
tail
bill. That's a
length.
sparrow. Um, yeah, relatively unstreaked. Looks like it might have some stuff on the flanks there, but that's kind of that really thin pin streaking that's just screams kind of juvenile bird to me. A lot of juvenile birds in the very early in their plumage have very fine streaking that they lose pretty quickly once they molt out of that juvenile plumage.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting face pattern. Big white eyebrow, big white malar, gray
Throat.
cheek.
Yeah, I mean the throat is white. We can
No,
kind of see it all the way
yeah, no
around.
eye ring to speak of.
Little
Great,
eye arc.
great cheek. Yeah, maybe eye arcs, especially one on the bottom there.
Well, and
Um,
it's got that grayish bill, which kind of rules out. So I mean, you talked about some of the finches and sparrows and things. Um,
mhm,
it the gray bill really rules out a lot of birds,
mhm.
and um, there's things like I'm thinking of some of the clear-breasted sparrows. Um, when they're not obvious, like okay, like chipping sparrow, when it's not obviously a chipping sparrow in breeding plumage and it's in winter or juvenile plumage,
Mhm.
it has a pink bill, and that goes for a lot of the clear-breasted sparrows. They're either pink or yellowish. They don't have this blue-gray bill.
Yeah.
One of the birds that does have a blue-gray bill that is found in Arizona at least part of the year is lark bunting. Um, this just doesn't tick many boxes for lark bunting. Lark bunting, the female's got very, very streaky, big
Mhm.
white wing patches, very bold face pattern.
And the
I
bill
don't,
is massive too in a lark
and
bunting
the
too.
bill
We
is
think of like
massive.
we lark bunting. Its name is bunting, but like the bill is like a grosbeak or a cardinal or something. Like it's very deep.
Yeah.
and large, and the it's a very compact bird as well. The tail is never going to be this long; it's going to be much shorter. So it's got a very unique shape, with a big, massive seed cracking bill and a relatively short tail. This doesn't strike
Yeah.
me as
No,
like looking
this
at all.
this is a
This is one of
sparrow.
those Western sparrows. The genera have changed so much over the
Yeah.
years. Is this one? It's like Amphispiza and Artemispiza and all those kind of
Yeah.
Western sparrows and the kind of sage sparrow complex, and also there's
Right.
some in that area that are look similar but are different genus.
So really, I
Black
mean,
chin, black throated, things like that.
looking at the the brown back and the white in the face and the white throat and the gray bill and everything, sage sparrow. That's sagebrush
Yeah.
sparrow is
Yeah, sagebrush sparrow. But sage sparrow was
sagebrush
split
sparrow.
maybe
Yeah.
a decade ago into sagebrush sparrow and Bell's sparrow, which is
Yeah.
farther west. But it's a very distinctly patterned sparrow with a big white eye ring, which doesn't really fit this bird. But young birds can look different than adult birds
Well,
too.
that's yes, young bird. So let's look at that
Is it
and
time for our composite, Greg?
yes, we're gonna jump into that and we're gonna look at sagebrush sparrow versus juvenile black-throated sparrow.
Yeah.
They're much more. I mean, if you don't live out west, if you do live out west or bird a lot out west, southwest, that's as natural to you as anything else. Seeing young black-throated sparrows, but
Hmm.
being an Easterner, I don't. I think of black-throated sparrow as being a very distinct, bold bird
Yeah,
that you could never
big black
mistake for
throat,
anything.
for sure.
And when I was putting this together, I didn't realize just how similar a juvenile black-throated sparrow and a sagebrush sparrow are.
Hmm. Found in the
And
same sort of places too.
they're found in
Interestingly
the
enough.
same sort of places. I mean,
Yeah.
starting from
Especially in the
back to
winter.
front, they both have long tails. They
Mhm.
both have white outer tail feathers. They both have brown backs, mostly clear breasts and chests.
Mhm.
Gray head with gray and white facial pattern.
Mhm.
But the
Bluish
black-throated
bill,
sparrow, huh?
bluish bill,
And the bluish gray bill.
blue gray bill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
much more similar than I realized without sitting back and thinking about it.
Yeah, for sure. Some things that really want to point out, and Chrissy Esmahan points it out in the comments there, is that the eye ring is
Yes,
quite different. Sagebrush sparrow
quite
has
different.
a massive, prominent, full eye ring, whereas black-throated
Absolutely.
sparrow, as Greg pointed out, is more of an eye arc. Maybe a little bit on the bottom, and whatever is on the top kind of disappears into that eyebrow.
Yep.
Eyebrow too, also different shape. The eyebrow, or it's really more of a lore, white lore on the
Yep.
sagebrush sparrow, which is that spot in front of the eye between the eye and
Or
the bill.
or as it used
A
to be
dark
called,
lore with a little white on top of it.
or it used to be. Well, actually, you're right. The lores are dark.
Mhm.
That is sometimes called the fronds. FRONS. Yes.
Fronds.
That is the fronds. So when I had a
We're all
Rottweiler,
fronds
when
here.
I had a Rottweiler, I learned the spot. All right, so short snouted dogs, the spot right between their eyes on that little forehead.
Oh, they love
that-
that. Yeah.
That's called the stop.
Oh,
Like
really?
in
Oh,
dog breeder
okay.
terms, that is called the stop. I don't know why, but that's what it's called.
Should
And
be
that
the
is, of
don't
course,
stop, because they really like it when you scratch that spot.
Then you scratch them there, you give them a little kiss on the face there.
Yeah.
They love that. Anyways, yes, the fronds. Not to be mistaken for the
For the
shark
stop.
jumping type.
Yeah. Yeah, so look at the eyebrow. The eyebrow of the black-throated sparrow goes well beyond the back of the eye, all the way down to
Yes.
the nape. Very long, very prominent, very short on the sagebrush sparrow. And our mystery bird, big eye ring. I mean, that's one of the most obvious things about that face. So
You're
yeah,
talking
I
about
think it's
the
pretty clear.
sagebrush sparrow. So the mystery bird,
Mystery bird is a
has
black-throated.
is a black-throated, yes, and it's got that
Yeah.
white going behind the eye. It's got a barely noticeable lower eye arc, not the big white eye ring of a sagebrush sparrow, and it's got the little bit of streaking on the chest, which we can kind of see, but the lighting kind of
see a little
throws
bit,
it off a little bit. But yeah, and then I included five-striped sparrow because Gilbert, Arizona is kind of in the range of five-striped,
I
and
was wondering where that might be.
it's kind of a similar bird. And sometimes what I do when putting these together is I pull up the Sibley app and just do the similar species to see what Sibley pops up, as a sort of a little cheat to figure out what to put in these comps. So I mean, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. But five striped, I think, was one of the ones that was included, and five striped is just
more unicolored. It's a honking sparrow too.
Yeah.
I've not seen five striped, but like it's a chunky bird, whereas black throated and sagebrush are a bit more svelte, a bit
But
smaller. Five striped
it's
is
got
like
a thinner
Zono
bill
size, right?
and a very
Yeah.
slate gray, almost junco like chest.
Mhm.
It's a very unique bird. But just included it in there because why not? I had a little extra space.
Katie Van Blaricum asks, I guess the throat actually turns black at some point. Yes, it does.
Yes,
Not
it
sure when.
does.
I imagine not too long after that. I mean, this is like we said, this is a juvenile sparrow. So juvenile plumage is like the first adult feathers, the first feathers that are not down that a bird has.
Yeah.
And they usually don't hold those very on. Do we know when this photo was taken, Greg?
I believe it was recently.
Recently. Well,
I believe
maybe
it was
this would be
fairly
more
recently.
accurately,
Well, it
more
may have been over
accurately
the winter.
called like first spring or
Yeah.
first fall or formative or whatever the term is for that.
But yeah, an adult black-throated sparrow has a face pattern that's somewhat reminiscent of a golden-winged warbler, with a big black throat and a black mask, and it's set off by white eyebrow and white malar. It's a striking bird.
It's a really neat looking bird. I'm trying to think of other sparrows that take a while to get their adult plumage.
Swamp.
Yeah, swamp. So
You see a lot
it
of
would not surprise me if this was a sort of thing that happened more often. But the differences, the nuances between like a formative plumage and an adult plumage are so much subtler on a lot of our sparrows, whereas they're fairly drastic for black-throated sparrow.
Yeah, but I'm seeing real streaky juvenile-looking swamp sparrows in April is
yeah,
not
that's true.
uncommon.
Throughout the winter, yeah.
All right. So as we said, you guys, I'm watching Facebook. Nate is watching YouTube.
We spent some time on that one. We were getting
If
back
you've
on
got
track.
anything to say, any questions, anything you want to bring up, hit the comments there. We're watching it, and we will get to you. So we're going to stay in the Southwest. Oh, no, we're not. Sorry. We're going to go to the Southeast.
It's Southwest Florida. It's Southwest Florida.
Southwest Florida. Forgot about this one. This is something that we see a lot this time
John
of
D.
year.
Anderson. John D. Anderson clarifies for us on Facebook. Thank you, John. First pre-basic molt in black-throated sparrow is incomplete June to November. That's what we're looking at. We're seeing the incomplete molt. Thank you for that. All this molt terminology. Anyway,
So
back to Southwest Florida.
Yeah, and as migration kicks in, in places like South Texas and Southwest Florida, migration has definitely kicked in. My fantasy birding day in High Island a couple days ago, I think for the 25-kilometer circle, had 184 species seen in one day.
Yeah,
around High Island,
they're in the 30s now, in the 30 latitudes. I don't know exactly where this is, but that's where they are in April. But they're coming north.
Yeah, so we got a couple of little birds with yellow on it in a bird bath. And again, this is something that people who have bird baths or watch puddles and stuff, you'll see little thin-billed birds like this, and we can kind of cut to the chase. These are warblers. They especially warblers if you're in New York City, and they particularly enjoy, if you do have a bird bath or water feature, they like splashy water, like little sprinkles and little waterfalls and stuff. They're attracted to the noise of the water, and they like to get under there. And anyways, we've got two birds here, and I think one is pretty quickly identifiable, and the other one is one that
Which one?
The one at the lower right, I think, is
What do
pretty
you
quickly
on both of these?
identifiable.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
I think so. I mean,
You want to do
if
that
you
one first?
if you talk through it, um, you talk yourself through it. You've got a bird with a yellow face,
Mm-hmm.
a real kind of spike-like black bill, and a little
Mm-hmm.
black mask. I can also see some wing bars on the gray wings,
Yeah.
um,
Big white patches on the tail as well.
and big white patches in the tail. I mean, you flip through the warblers for just a few moments, and you will come across blue-winged warbler, which is one of the ones that you were talking about with Nick and Matt.
Yeah, I
The
know the
blue
wing
wing and
bars are
golden
something
wing,
to
one of the
note
winged
for these
warblers.
birds as well.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
the
they're coming through in good numbers in Florida, I imagine, this time of year. But yeah, there's a lot of warblers that are kind of yellowish and yellowish on the face.
yeah,
Things like Prothonotary or Wilson's warbler or yellow warbler.
yeah,
Um, Trying to think of any off the top of my head. But the one thing that blue-winged warbler has that the others don't is that black lore. So that spot between the eye and the bill that we pointed out is always black in a blue-winged warbler. It kind of gives it kind of almost like
yeah,
a sinister look. Whereas, Prothonotary yellow, Wilsons, all those birds have very wide open faces with bright yellow lores that makes the eye stand out in the middle of that face where it kind of disappears into the eye, the mask almost of a blue-winged warbler.
Now on
So yeah,
Facebook, Len Kopka says he thinks that the bird at upper left is more easily ID'd. The lower right takes a little more thought.
yeah, that's why I asked you, Greg, because I think the way you described it could describe both of them in a manner of speaking. The
Maybe,
feathers are wet and messy. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it is wet and messy, but that black bill and that little black mask that you pointed out and the white wing bars, I realize it's, yes, because it is wet and messy. But as you said, Nate, when you get down to like the yellow faced warblers, there's really not very many to choose from. But and maybe my idea here is skewed by spending so much time in what's this bird, and because the bird at the upper left is one of the things that is
It's
most
streaky
commonly,
and brown, and yeah, you're right. It is a commonly asked for bird,
yes,
requested bird, and what's this bird? That is true. Probably in the top 10 easily.
yes, yes,
It's
right
another
up there
warbler.
with female red-winged blackbird. Um,
Yeah, of which it is not completely dissimilar to.
Yeah, so I mean, it's got some
Brown and streaky,
streakies. It's got some streakies.
little bit of
It's got
yellow.
a little bit of yellow, an eye line. It kind of has wing bars, but kind of,
A little bit.
you
Yeah, it's got some
know,
fringing.
it's got
Yeah.
some fringing. Um, and it's, we can see just a little bit of color on the undertail coverts, but they're
Hmm.
kind of hidden from us a little bit, so it's
Hmm.
hard to say. But this is one of the most variable warblers in the ABA area, and it confuses people. So we're just going to take a look
It's also a
at what it
bird
is.
that a still picture does a disservice to because it is absolutely bobbing that tail up and down in a
Yeah,
video or in life that makes the identification relatively easy or easier, I should say.
yeah, yeah. So now, just going back to that blue-winged warbler again, the bird that blue-winged is most frequently confused with, I think, at least from, again, people
Mhm.
online, is Prothonotary, and
I'd agree with that.
and again, when you get a good look at the two, they're really not. But they both have a lot
Yeah,
of
the
white in the tail.
different shaped.
Um,
Yeah.
they're different shapes. The yellow is different. It's lemony on
Hmm.
blueing versus golden and Prothonotary.
Hmm.
But they both have kind of thick, spiky bills. Although Prothonotary is bigger and thicker, and
Yeah.
it's just a heftier
It's got a
bird than
big
blue winged.
bill. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a heftier bird than blue winged. But it's got those blue wings, and that's one of the
Hmm.
things that is confusing. But now the streaky bird on the left, um, two of the birds that are most commonly asked about, warblers anyways, are pine and palm. And looking at the bird that in question at the left, I think we can quickly get pine warbler out of the equation here because of that bold eye line. And
Yeah, the eye line and
and
pine warbler can be so variable.
it
But
is.
in all plumages, it's gonna have pretty prominent wing bars
Yep.
that you're not gonna miss. And palm doesn't. I mean, to the extent that it has wing bars, they are faint, they are fringy, there's not just a lot there.
Yeah. Yeah. And but now when you go to palm warbler, um, just like pine warbler, different plumages. Uh, they are and pine warbler. Just going back to what you were saying, is one of those birds that holds on to juvenile plumage well into the spring and well into late
Yes.
April and
Part of
May.
the reason what makes them so difficult
You'll
is
see
that they
those
can, yeah.
completely nondescript gray, almost
Mm-hmm.
streaky pine warblers.
They look like nothing.
And on a
Yeah.
rainy day when they're bouncing around on the ground, they're
Yeah,
just
they'll come down.
really
They'll come down on
confusing.
the ground.
But palm warbler, as Nate said, if you see one, they're bobbing that tail, and they've got a
Mm-hmm.
very unique way of unique habits,
Yeah.
and they
Uh,
bob that
An
tail
old
and kind
name
of
for it
bounce
is
around.
wagtail warbler.
Yeah,
It's a
pretty much
colloquial
in
name.
all plumages, it has a fairly bold eye line, and
Mm-hmm.
as Nate said, a little bit of fringing on the wing coverts, but nothing that really makes it wing bars. But there is some
Nothing that
pattern
rises to
there.
bars.
Yep. The other thing is they pretty much always have yellowish under tail coverts and a green rump,
Mm-hmm.
which we can't see here. Um, but just look at all the variation, and this, I only had room for four, but there is just so much variation in this species as we go from east to west,
Mm-hmm.
and west
And it is
being
funny, yeah, west is so east and west refers to where the birds breed in
right.
Canada. Eastern palm warbler breeds in Quebec, northern Quebec, and Labrador and that area. Western palm warbler breeds in the boreal across Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and
Yeah.
the territories up there. So that's what it refers to, which is funny because so-called Western palm warbler is actually super common in the East and
Yes.
in Florida. I think that is the predominant subspecies that overwinters in the Southeast are
Yes.
the Western birds. Eastern birds are somewhat rare. I want to say that they migrate further west, but I'm not exactly sure. All I know is that where I
I
live,
think
Western palm warbler out. The timing on the two is slightly different as well.
yeah.
But Western is outnumbers Eastern 10 to 1, 20 to 1. Like
Yeah.
it's not even close, really. At
Yeah,
least where
and
I live.
Eastern is really Eastern, like Vernon up
Yeah,
there in Newfoundland. That's where they
yeah,
get those bright yellow
yeah.
and rufous palm warblers. And I have seen some of the Eastern in Florida, but you're right, they're like 1 in 20, and
Yeah,
in the wintertime it's not as straightforward as it is in May or June.
right.
Um,
Yeah,
but
I mean
yes,
those palm warblers in Florida, they bop around on lawns. I mean, they're like robins or house sparrows or whatever. They're
yeah.
just ridiculously common all throughout there. So unsurprising that one would be at the at a bird bath this time of year
Yeah, so we've got
or
a
anytime throughout
palm
the cold
warbler on
months.
the left and a blue-winged warbler on the right. And for the last one here, we are going back to the southwest. I just got the order of these slides incorrect, but we are going back to the southwest. We are going to the desert again, this time to southwest Utah, to St. George. Um, and we really can't see a whole heck of a lot on this bird.
Yeah, not a lot to say. I mean, it's sitting up on some shrubby grass. What can we see? Maybe a little bit of an eye line here, but
Yeah,
how obvious is that? It's got the light shining
that
on
could be
it, so
lighting. I
it could be
can't tell
just
what
the
that
feather
is.
topography there. Looks like it's got a decently long tail that's
Yeah,
sticking through there, and long legs. A little bit of a spotting on the side, which I think is sort of important.
yeah.
St.
Well,
George, Utah is yeah. This is a
the
bill is
thing that
kind of longish and
eh,
curved. So we're looking at a mimic thrush, one of our thrashers or mockingbirds.
you
The
think so?
overall coloring, yeah, I'd be happy calling this a mimid. So not a catbird for sure, certainly not in Utah.
No. Well, the thing that
Mockingbird, it's too brown for Mockingbird. No wing bars either. Mockingbird has big white patches in the wings that show up even when the bird is perched. This is one of our desert
yeah.
thrashers, I would
Well,
say.
and so one thing that we can definitely see very well because of the lighting is the yellow eye. And
Yeah, yeah. The eye is pale. That's for sure.
and there are really only a small handful of passerines, that being perching birds that we have that have bright yellow eyes.
Mm.
And the thrashers are among the most. I mean, I think there's three or
Thrashers,
four.
vireos,
Well, there's one vireo,
one vireo.
and
I'm thinking
there
like
aren't.
even pale irises are sort of
I
unusual
mean,
in perching birds when I really sit
cactus
down to
wren
think
kind of
about
has
it.
a pale iris, but not really.
Yeah.
Um, but there aren't very many birds with yellow eyes, and the mimid thrushes, the thrashers and mockingbirds and such, are definitely the family that has the most, at least for us.
Yeah.
Um,
Give the bird a lot of personality for sure.
yeah, and so in Southwest Utah, um, there's maybe three species that come into
Hmm.
play, and really only two, but there's a possibility of a third. So let's take a look at those. And so the three are three thrashers: bend ears, curve billed, and sage. And there's two marks that
Bush tit, wren tit. Yeah, thank you. Two more birds that have pale eyes. We talked about one last time. Bush tit and wren tit. Just
yes,
people are naming birds with passerines with pale eyes.
yes,
This one's
and
clearly not a bush tit or a wren tit.
it's clearly not a bush tit or a wren tit. So a wren tit in Utah, that would be a stunner.
That'd be a
Um,
good bird.
and there's bush tits, but yeah, not with those long legs and hefty bill and everything
Different
like that.
proportions for sure.
Yes, very. It's bush tits, a little ping pong ball with
Hmm.
glaring yellow eyes that wants to kill you. Um, and
Catbirds
so,
breed across northern Utah. Thank you, John. My status and distribution, which is important for this conversation.
which is what we're
Um,
talking about here.
yeah. Wow, I didn't know that.
That is
Well,
the
this
that
is
is the
southern
point
Utah.
of this one. But there's two things here that stick out. As you said, or I think maybe it was Len who mentioned the bill. We look at that bill. It's got a little bit of a curve to it, but it's not really curved. But the spotting on the flank that Nate pointed out really kind of steers us to sage thrasher, and everything seems
Mhm.
to fit for sage thrasher. But the thing that I wanted to point out here is the range. And yeah, John, I didn't want to. John Anderson brings up a point on Facebook, says only the females would like to kill you. Of the bush tits, that is. And I didn't want to say that, but John said it for me, so there you go. Um, Bendier's Thrasher, the red dot, by the way, in the map there is St. George, Utah, where this bird was photographed. And we're looking at eBird maps, and the little purple squares, the darker purple they get, the more commonly the birds are reported. So Bendier's, you can see, yeah, it's in the area. It's not particularly common. It's not a particularly common species anywhere, really.
Yeah, it's
Curve
very,
build,
very scattered.
yeah, curve build, not so much. I mean, they're not there. There's maybe a couple of records. You're really right past the edge of where they're found, around the Grand Canyon and further south. But then you look at the map for sage thrasher, and yeah, they're all
Maybe
over the
the
place.
maybe the most common, or at least the most obvious bird in this sort of habitat across much of the interior West. Remember sage thrasher being all over the place when I drove through Wyoming many
Yeah,
years ago. Um, yeah, someone asked, does the bill look too long for sage?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Some of those things are a little bit variable, but I don't see anything. I think if the bill were any longer, we would see more of a curve. So you look at the bill on
Yeah,
a curve bill thrasher, for instance, and that's a pretty big honking bill that curves down quite a bit. It looks relatively straight in our mystery bird, which is more in line with what you'd see of a sage thrasher. Interesting thing about sage
yeah.
thrashers is they're not actually that closely related to the other kind of desert
Mm-hmm.
thrashers. They're more closely related to mockingbirds. they're kind of in their own little genus in the Mimidi family, but I think their closest relative is northern mockingbird, which makes sense. They're more of like a sageland upland mockingbird
Yeah.
than a thrasher.
And at this angle, looking at the photo in the upper left of the mystery bird, um, if it just from the head, we really couldn't tell if it was Bendier's or Sage because the bill.
Mm.
I mean, the bill on a Bendier's is a little bit
It's a
longer
short bill. Yeah.
and a little bit more curved, but
Not a
not
lot.
so much
Yeah.
in that you could tell at this angle and this quality of photograph.
Yeah.
But Nate, as you pointed out from the very beginning, we see those very well defined spots on that
Yeah, it's
little bit
definitely
of
got some
flank
spots on it.
that sticks out there, and that really seals the deal because if that was Bendier's at that point, we wouldn't see those, and we might see a little bit of that kind of unique rufusy, rusty color that Bendier's has on the lower flanks. And Aaron Maislish points out that crystal thrasher is also found in southwest Utah, and yes, it is, but it has
in there.
but it has a dark eye. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah, it does, doesn't it?
It has a dark eye.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that gives LeConte's thrasher such a bizarre. I mean, I suppose it would look bizarre no matter what, but that super pale ashy gray bird with that big long dark bill and that black beady black eye, it makes it look like it's from like desert Africa or the Middle East or something. It really
like
looks
a
like one of
mesite or
those
something from South America. Yeah.
Yeah. And Daphne and Rose says that they had a couple of vagrant sage thrashers in Florida. Yeah, sage thrashers, they get around.
There was one in North Carolina a couple weeks ago.
As we get one every 3 years in Illinois, and they're all over the place. So yeah, we have a sage thrasher here. So that's our birds.
We did it.
And,
boy, we nailed that one, Greg.
Oh boy, like right to the minute.
Right to the minute. It's like we needed all that little confusion, at the beginning with regard to YouTube that made us hit our spot.
We'd have to fill up 4 minutes here if it wasn't for that.
That's professionalism. Folks, thank you so much for joining us for another What's This Bird. If you're interested in helping support all of the free resources that the ABA provides, please consider joining the ABA. We're a membership organization, and one of the best ways to support us is to join the ABA, get access to all sorts of cool stuff. Our wonderful magazines. We mentioned North American Birds, Birding Magazine. You get access to things like North American Red Bird Alert. You get access to the ABA community. You get access to all sorts of really cool stuff that we have on our website. It's all for members, all for you if you join. It's not terribly expensive. Cup of coffee.
It costs a cup of coffee a month, $2.50 a month to be an ABA
cup
member. Cup of coffee. Yep.
So please consider joining us. We'll be back in a couple weeks. Actually, I'm out of town in a couple weeks, so maybe 3 weeks. And we'll join you again. Go to the website aba.org, sign up for our newsletter. We'll give you a heads up a few days ahead of time when we're about to do this. Or on YouTube, you can subscribe to the ABA's YouTube channel. That's another way to get the heads up. You'll know when I create this program. Greg, it's been fun. All of y'all out there, enjoy your birding. We got to get an outro that works better, Greg. But I hope everybody enjoys their spring. We'll be back. We'll be back in a bit.
All right. Later, guys.